Louisiana Democratic Party candidate forum for the 5th Congressional District. I am really excited to introduce you tonight to Jesse Freemore.
Good to see you, Stephen.
Freemore. I'm getting it wrong already.
That's all
I was
right.
so practicing earlier. I am so excited to have you in this race. And so why don't we begin by you just go ahead and introduce yourself to the people and let them know a little bit about you.
Well, I'm excited to be here too, Stephen. Awesome. We needed a Democrat in this race. It looked like it was going to be the second time around that we didn't have a horse going. So, as you said, my name is Jesse Carlton Fleener. I'm a farmer by trade, a father of 3, soon to be 3, and a Democrat from northern Tangipahoa Parish there. And throw my hat in the ring here for the first time, but a long-time political activist, so I'm excited.
Look, I'm telling you, I am so over the moon that we have some great candidates that we're introducing the state to. I'm over the moon about it. So we're going to get into this right now because we want to get people to understand a little bit more about you and get your positions on issues that are facing folks right now. So let's dig right in with a real easy topic, international politics.
Oh yeah, that's nothing going on right now, really.
Nothing going on right now, but President Trump has spoken and misspoken multiple different times about the relationship, or lack thereof, that we have with Russia. 17 intelligence agencies have come to the conclusion that Russia hacked our elections and definitely meddled in the 2016 election. What do you think we should do to hold Russia and Vladimir Putin accountable for their actions?
That's a really good question, Stephen. I'll tell you, it is an interesting time when it comes to our relations with Russia. For a long time, people remember they're our #1 global adversary there, and the Republicans all seem to know that as well as the Democrats. Some people seem to have forgotten that recently, and we're treating them more like an ally than we are traditional NATO partners. That being said, I believe the right course of action going forward in terms of the Mueller investigation would be to let it play out in an impartial, unbiased way and see where the chips fall when it's done. I don't think that we should make any assumptions necessarily as to what was done and what wasn't done in terms of collusion. But Mueller will release his report, hopefully sooner rather than later. And if it does look like there was coordination between the campaigns, that'll have to be dealt with, probably by the House of Representatives.
Yeah, outstanding. So reports are coming through that of the damaging effects of the Trump tariffs.
Indeed.
I certainly think as a farmer, you may have a few things to say about that.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, my district, the 5th District in Louisiana, is a largely agricultural, rural district. And, you know, there are a lot of people down here that want to like this president, but that's a hard thing to do when his tariffs are destroying your livelihood. Every 3rd row of soybeans around here is shipped to China, and it looks like that's just about to fall off to 0. If the trade war escalates, it could affect not only farmers, but people in manufacturing and other industries throughout the country. It's not what we need for business. It's not what we need for workers. We need free, fair trade throughout the world, and we've always been a beacon for that and an example for other countries. So we need to get back on that track and play by the rules.
Yeah, that's for sure. And are you hearing from voters out there that are concerned about this?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I mean, farming is a business where the margins are already really thin. A lot of times people don't bring in enough to even pay their debts back for that year, from fuel to seed costs and everything else. So yeah, it's a major concern even among some self-described conservative friends of mine, and so it's something we're paying really close attention to in the 5th District.
Outstanding. Yeah, I think that that's so important, and to have someone talking about it. I mean, the incumbent in your position
really
has been awfully quiet about
He doesn't show up much. That's been one of the consistencies that people bring up with me. Ralph Abraham has been representing this district for at least 6 years now, and it seems like he moved to Washington and then just about sat on his hands. He's available for photo ops, never wants to be quoted on anything though, and hardly ever shows up in any of the beautiful towns of the 5th District. So we're looking to change that up and see if we can't get some real representation in the 5th District.
And the voters have that opportunity on
Indeed,
November 6th.
they do on November 6th.
All right, so let's talk about some domestic issues.
Yes, sir.
The meat and the potatoes of what we need our members of Congress to do. So the GOP plan to balance the $1 trillion budget deficit they created by cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. What would you do to ensure the promises that we've made to seniors and to the workers of this country are kept in whole?
Yeah, the last 30 years have seen, if nothing, just a stagnation of wages in this country, while we've had tax cut after tax cut for the millionaire investor class. We need to start reversing that trend. We need to start empowering unions again, allow them to collectively bargain for their wages like they did through the great years of the 50s and 60s and 70s, like people like to harp back to. Instead of trillion-dollar tax cuts to corporations, we need to be pumping those same trillions out of bloated corporations and into our schools and into infrastructure and investments in the working people of America.
Speaking of organized labor, I do recall you might have just been endorsed by the AFL.
Indeed. Yeah, my good friends at the AFL-CIO, they were my first full endorsement. I got their unanimous endorsement there, and so very much appreciate it. And over the next 90 days, you can find me in union halls all over the 5th District.
That's outstanding.
Yes, sir.
So being healthy leads to a better quality of life for all Americans. The Affordable Care Act is far from perfect. We know that. But it's certainly under assault right now by the GOP. What do you see as the best way to provide quality, cost-efficient health care for all Americans?
Yes, sir. That is a top priority that's always on my mind. Healthcare is a conundrum in this country. I mean, we have the best facilities, the best medical schools, and the best doctors in the trade in this country, absolutely. But too many people can't actually afford to access any of those great facilities. Since the Affordable Care Act was passed, 25 million more Americans have health insurance. And too often you'll see an article that just blows by that fact too quickly. 25 million people, our fellow citizens, now have insurance, and they did not before. I mean, basically the conversation should end there, but there are still too many who are left behind. There are a lot of people talking about a Medicare for all type system. I think that is one potential way to go, possibly starting with allowing people of 50 years or older to start buying into the Medicare system. Whatever we do, we need to figure out how to provide affordable, quality health care to all Americans, just like every other industrialized country in the world has figured out how to do.
Absolutely.
No
Absolutely.
excuse not to.
The internet has become a vital resource for conducting business and a critical part of our everyday lives. Right here in Lafayette, we were able to do a fiber optics to the home. One of the things that we were talking about a little bit earlier today was a former governor with the name of Bobby Jindal decided to not take advantage of the federal program that would have brought rural broadband to many of the areas of your district. What do you think we should do about that to be able to help out?
You know, broadband internet is so essential to modern life in this 21st century. It's not 1997 anymore. We don't use dial-up. And in my district in particular, there are large swaths where you will drive across for an hour or two and basically have no signal at all. That's devastating for the economic chances of these communities to revitalize. So I believe we need a new national program to reinvest in infrastructure of all types, not only new energy grids and new roads and bridges, but also high-speed broadband for all American citizens, including deeply rural areas like my own. Yes, sir.
Wow. So one of the other things that I think that we've talked a little bit about is, you know, our democracy is based on representation, and where the people actually get to choose who represents them. But it almost seems like right now that our representatives are choosing what people they want to represent.
Isn't it the truth?
How do we get this system cleaned up?
Right. Gerrymandering, I believe, is what we're talking about there. It has gotten to the point where too many times the representatives are choosing their voters instead of the other way around. My district in particular is one of those that has a highly irregular shape, we'll call it. I believe that what we need to do all across the country, not just here in Louisiana, is move to nonpartisan civic institutions that can draw fair, contiguous districts that will be competitive and bring the American people back towards a consensus view instead of electing extremists or having one-party districts continuously.
Well, and I think that that's part of the, you're hitting the nail on the head right there, is that when we partisanly gerrymander these districts, what happens is that the 20 to 30% of the district that is in the minority,
right,
the incumbent or the representative never has to talk to them.
Nope.
Because they don't ever need to go to them for anything.
Absolutely.
If they're a permanent minority, they don't ever have to check in with them.
There are plenty of towns in my district that are 75, 80% African American, great people, incredibly interesting and ambitious people that have never been visited by their representative. And that has to change. Great towns like Faraday and Vidalia and all up and down the river there, they just feel like they have no representation, and that's why I'm getting into this, to change that. I feel like in one of the poorest districts in the entire United States, the 5th District of Louisiana, where often per capita income is as low as $6,000 in some of these parishes, it makes no sense to have a representative who's worth tens of millions of dollars. A man like that just cannot understand the needs of these people.
Well, and speaking further about individuals who might be a little bit out of touch, Scott Pruitt has left in Huff from the EPA, and the new interim director is a coal lobbyist.
Mm-hmm.
You make a living, you provide for your family, those soon-to-be 3 children. You live off the land.
Yes, sir.
Isn't there a balance that needs to be struck?
Indeed, absolutely. I mean, here in Louisiana, we have some of the greatest natural beauty available in these United States. It's the sportsman's paradise. That being said, we need to be much more responsible about the way that we take care of those natural resources so that my children and their children can enjoy them in their time. We have spent too much time, I believe, bickering over who's to blame for things like climate change, when really that misses the point altogether. Okay, we got here largely unknowingly and on top of a whole lot of progress that we all took part in. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at the problem of climate change with clear eyes and think of solutions that will bring us forward in the future to a better energy system and a better climate. I believe we need a new federal program to invest dollars into clean energy into places that were previously reliant on fossil fuel extraction, like Louisiana, Texas, and the Appalachian South, to revitalize some of these communities that are struggling so hard.
Wow, and that's the real conversation that I'm hearing from traveling the state, is a lot of individuals are very interested in having conversations of, yes, I have worked offshore, or my father worked offshore.
Absolutely.
And now I'm starting to learn the new intricacies of installing solar panels.
Absolutely.
And so diversifying where we're getting our energy from, isn't that going to make us stronger?
Yeah, and those are the jobs of the future, Stephen. Right. So we can't pretend like coal jobs are going to be around forever. My ancestors on my father's side spent many time in an Appalachian coal mine, and I love those people. They're great people, but those towns are struggling. They're being hollowed out as we speak. So we need investment, federal investment, in towns previously relying on fossil fuel extraction, so we can move ourselves forward to the next chapter of energy production.
Well, to draw you out a little bit more on that, it seems to me like a part of that federal investment needs to be about training these workers the new skills.
Absolutely.
How would that look? What would that look like?
We need investments in education from K through 12 all the way to higher education, as well as job training for alternative career paths. There are plenty of jobs coming about that people could be retrained for and get good, high-paying $50,000, $60,000 a year salaries, and that's all the people of District 5 and of Louisiana really want. They're not greedy. They want a regular, good life, They have a little bit of extra time to spend with their family, to pursue a passion, be involved in the community. But too often people make less than $20,000 a year around here, and that's just unacceptable.
Well, and that kind of goes back to our first topic that we talked about here is the tariffs. You know, we know that the Trump administration is going to be sending down some money. They're going to try and find some money to send down to farmers.
Political hush money.
I mean, talk a little bit about that, because the farmers that I know, especially like you, the generational family farms,
Yes,
right?
sir.
You don't want any money from the government. You want to be able to sell your products at a reasonable rate and not have the government get in the middle.
You know, that's why I got into farming. You know, it's an honest living. There's nothing more American, in my opinion, than agriculture. So few of us do it anymore that we've forgotten, really, that we all used to basically have gardens and farms.
Yeah.
But the 2 or 3% of us left that are farming, we just want to grow our crops and sell them in as many markets as we can, make an honest living. We don't want $12 billion of political hush money or Soviet-style economics around here. We just want a fair shot at selling our product.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Imagine that.
Wouldn't that
imagine
be nice?
that.
I tell you
what. Well, and the interesting thing is that is not what we as Democrats get painted as a lot of the times. Right. And you know, it's really offensive to me when I heard. I mean, yes, for all of these, I've talked to a lot of soybean farmers that have told me that what's unfair about this whole situation was they already put their beans in the ground.
Right.
They had already planted their crops when this came in. Right. So they're looking at a potential loss that could be more than 50% of what they're looking at, especially because we keep doubling down on all of these tariffs that are in place.
And it really is bizarre to be coming from the Republican Party. I mean, things are really in flux right now. I mean, I think the election of President Trump definitely shook a lot of people up. We have to rethink what it means to be a Democrat, what it means to be a Republican. And, you know, free trade is one of those things that's good for everybody.
Yeah.
It lifts all boats together.
Yep.
And so to be placing arbitrary tariffs on our largest trading partners throughout the world, I mean, I don't see how you would think anything good would come of that.
Certainly when we can see almost immediate effects right here with real people, especially in the 5th Congressional.
And these are people who make well less than $50,000 a year normally. And so to be putting any more hardship on those people is totally unacceptable.
Right. The margins are already so difficult as it is.
Yes, sir.
So we talked a little bit about education. So let's talk about Betsy DeVos. Has shown little regard for America's students and especially the teachers, from stripping student rights to not supporting teachers in the classroom. What would you do to ensure America's education system truly allows every student to succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's got to be our fundamental #1 priority. Our children are the future. You know, both of my parents were educators here in Louisiana. My mother ran a Title I program in New Orleans in the 70s there before stopping to raise us 5 kids. My father was head of the accounting department at Southeastern Louisiana University for a long time. So I have a great appreciation for educators. And I know I'm not the only one who wouldn't be in this position today were it not for a whole line of great educators and mentors. That being said, it is totally unacceptable that such a vital role as teacher in our society is underpaid, undercompensated, and teachers often report twice the levels of stress of other groups of workers. So we need to re-engage in a new national dialogue with our teachers and listen to what they're saying. And what I hear them saying, Stephen, is that they need the resources to do this most important job right.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right.
And that goes from kindergarten all the way through higher education.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that also means that having an individual at the head of our educational system as Secretary of Education should probably actually support public schools and our public school teachers.
Well, I'll tell you this. Both of my school-age children go to Louisiana public schools. They both have teachers they feel they couldn't live without. And so, of course, not only does my opponent, Mr. Abraham, still somehow believe laughably that we should eliminate the federal Department of Education, which I just have no comment. It would be laughable if it wasn't so potentially harmful.
Yeah.
But otherwise, of course, we need a lifelong educator of children at the head of the Department of Education, not a billionaire lobbyist.
Right.
Absolutely.
Certainly not one that's enriching herself. But I hear she's fallen on hard times. One of her yachts actually got cast out. So I feel bad. I feel bad for her. Maybe we should take a moment of silence for her yacht.
There's always hope. I heard recently that 40% of the people working in the White House exactly a year ago are no longer there. So give it time.
Yep. Fingers crossed. Okay, so let's go to local and state issues right now. So with the failures of the Veterans Administration, the increase in homeless veterans and the increase in the suicide rates of veterans, how do you envision the VA providing adequate and expedient services to those who sacrifice for this country?
Yeah, our military veterans serve such a vital role in our American life. I mean, this conversation that we're having right now, being part of our democratic process, just would not be available or possible without the protection of our military from World War II onwards. And so when those people return home, those brave men and women, we need to be protecting them the same way they protect us. That means they should never pay a penny out of pocket for any type of health care expenses. And I believe we should go further and move towards ideas like a universal basic income for military veterans and for seniors, so that those who have given the most to our society are not asked to work themselves basically all the way through their golden years.
Right.
I mean, right now we have people over 65 going bankrupt at 3 times the rate they did in the 90s. I mean, this kind of stuff is completely unacceptable. When we're giving trillion-dollar tax cuts to corporations, we really got to get our priorities in line here.
Yeah, there definitely sounds to be something wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to think that we're going to pay for these huge tax cuts, or at least their argument is that now because of those huge tax cuts that we gave to the richest of the rich, that we now have to balance that on the backs of the individuals by cutting Social Security,
that is always
Medicare.
The wrong way to go. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, these corporations have begged for these tax cuts somehow when they've been flush with cash for decades now. I mean, since 2005, these big corporations have spent nearly $7 trillion on stock buybacks.
Right.
Those don't increase wages. Those don't hire new workers. They don't provide useful investment. That's the kind of thing that is absolutely untenable, and we need to change.
So Louisiana pays women 67 cents on the dollar compared to their male counterparts, and women of color in Louisiana less than 49 cents. With the legislature's inability to pass equal pay legislation, what would you do on the federal level to ensure that Louisiana women get paid for their equal work? As I do recall, you do have a young daughter.
Indeed, I do. And the idea that by the time she is an adult, that my son would make more than my daughter just by the arbitrary distinction of them being of different genders there is just infuriating. My daughter is every bit as sharp and as ambitious as my son. I love them both equally. Yeah. But that's something we should have dealt with long ago in this country. Whether it takes new legislation or a national amendment, every person should be paid equally for the same work, absolutely.
Yep. So with Governor Edwards expanding Medicaid in our state, we brought 19,000 new jobs and over $1.5 billion in direct economic impact in our state.
Incredible.
Do you support the Medicaid expansion, and what will you do to make sure that we expand it?
Do I ever? When John Bell Edwards took the courageous step to expand Medicaid, it dropped Louisiana's uninsured rate by 9 percentage points overnight. 400,000 of our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, got health insurance for the first time. I mean, literally saving those people's lives. So, I mean, if you don't see that as a good thing, I don't know what is. Absolutely.
Well, and by definition, these are individuals who are playing by the rules. They're literally working.
Absolutely. But at the same time, Stephen, I believe there's been this false narrative of the deserving and the undeserving poor. I can tell you right now, no such distinction exists in my heart. Every single American person who gets sick should be able to go to the doctor period.
Amen. Louisiana is unique because we're on the convergence of energy and the environment. We talked about this a little bit earlier. What would you do to protect the environment and ensure that Louisiana remains a dominant force in energy production? So we talked about a little bit of the new renewables and also in modern technology. Do you want to expand on any of that?
Yeah, you know, we talked about it a little bit. Oil and gas production has always been incredibly important for the economy of the state, and I believe it will be, continue to be, at least in the immediate term. I think we need to explore cleaner solutions. Solar power is, of course, one of them. Natural gas, I'm not against that at all. It's much cleaner burning than coal, of course, or petroleum. And offshore, I think there's potential for wind farms and all types of alternatives going forward. We need to put the necessary investments into the research and development of those things so that we own the technologies of the future.
So I'm hearing the answer is D, all of the above.
All of the above, always, yes, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. So the final question is Louisiana does not have a state minimum wage. The cost of living across the state certainly varies. It's more expensive to live in New Orleans than it is to live in northern Tangipahoa Parish. What would you do on the federal level to ensure that Louisiana residents get a long-awaited raise?
Absolutely. I mean, wages in this country have been stagnant for way too long, close to 30 years. I am so tired, Stephen, honestly, of hearing about the GDP. We've had maybe a couple of quarters now of close to 4% GDP growth, but the Labor Department just announced a couple of days ago that real wages haven't even kept up with inflation over the last year. So people today are making less than they were making exactly a year ago, and we got 4% growth. So I don't want to hear about the 4% growth.
Doesn't add up, does it?
Yeah. So, you know, the chipping away of the rights of workers to unionize and to bargain collectively, I believe that is a big part of the reason that wages have stagnated. So re-empowering unions, certainly bumping up the minimum wage. I mean, no one can live on $7.25 an hour. I mean, even if both parents are working at that, you're still making less than $20,000, $30,000
Nowhere
a year.
in the nation can you afford making minimum wage a one-bedroom apartment.
And the idea that some Americans are worth tens of millions of dollars while others are worth less than $20,000, I just believe that's totally
Something's
wrong.
not adding up.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, I know people who are maybe worth 2 times what another worker is worth. Maybe after years of experience, you know, a great amount of drive. No one's worth the 350 times that these CEOs and other top managers are making.
So we are wrapping up on time. Time flies when you're having fun.
Indeed, right?
That just flew by. So what sort of closing message do you want to leave with voters?
Yeah, you know, I'd like to thank anybody who was watching there. You know, if I have 2 messages that I'd like to leave people with, it would be this. We have to start treating people better in this country. We've got to treat each other better. Everyone who lives here is an American citizen, and we have to take care of each other. That's my number 1 message. Number 2, we need to build a new economy that works for the regular worker, the one who does the day in, day out work of America and keeps this country running, not just for the millionaire investor class. So those are my 2 main messages. We got to treat each other better, and we got to do better for the average worker.
That is incredibly important. And I think we also need to make mention that you're about to have your 3rd child.
That's
so
true.
So you told me within the next 30 days.
And God bless her, my wife is a great woman. She is fully behind me in this race. She's actually originally from Monroe, you know, the biggest city in my district there.
Sure.
And so we're all very excited about this, and we're in it to win it. But yes, she is incredibly pregnant right now. She's kind of living a type of Groundhog Day where she's not sure she's ever going to not be pregnant.
Right.
I have assured her that will.
Well, I think that we owe her a personal thank you tonight. So from all of us at the Louisiana Democratic Party, we definitely want to send a thank you out. And we are incredibly excited about your candidacy. We're so looking forward to the great things that you're going to accomplish for us. And we're going to be there for you on November 6th.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Good night.
All right.